we're talking about a 19-year-old young lady out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, who was due to graduate out of Milwaukee Area Technical College here shortly, and also wanted to join the Air Force after. So, huge dreams. Unfortunately, her life was cut short. And today we're going to discuss her background, the meetup, the timeline, even the court information that we have. And you're hearing it today on the Last Witness podcast. So we're going to discuss the meetup. What happened? Where did they go? Sade created an account through Threads and, just putting herself out there, posting, getting to know people, stuff like that. And she came across an individual named Maxwell Anderson. They continued their conversation, getting to know each other, and definitely decided to take the conversation off of Threads, which means exchanging their phone numbers. A conversation seemed to go pretty good that they went ahead and planned their first date. And their first date, oddly enough, was the Twisted Fisherman. The Twisted Fisherman was a place that Maxwell worked at before, and he wanted to get his W-2s, which you'll see in the text messages. That's pretty strange. Why disclosing that? I don't know. Well, we'll learn that Maxwell was definitely a strange individual. So the two actually meet at the Twisted Fisherman. Laughing was there for quite some time, getting to know each other. Mind you, Maxwell and Sade met at this location in two separate vehicles, two different transportation, as what we know. But then they decided to continue their date to the next place, which happens to be Dukes on the Water. And I'll actually show those locations here as well, so you can kind of get a gist of how their date was, the vibe that night. So as far as Dukes on the Water, they go together, and why, I don't know, but Maxwell ends up in Sade's vehicle to go to this location. So assuming the date was going pretty well and maybe Sade was feeling very comfortable with him to continue their date outside of that and have him in her vehicle. So we're going to go into a little bit of the timeline of what happened in locations that I have as of now that Sade and Maxwell seem to be going together. And again, this is just information that we have been provided just by local reports, journalism, and stuff like that. In my research into looking more into this and really listening to the interviews that Sade's mom also had put on, so we can just kind of put the two together and go from there. But this information is also released by the police that kind of gives us more of a timeline of how things went. So we're looking for April 1st, which is at 4:15 p.m. Sade texts Maxwell and discusses where they're going to meet up at the Twisted Fisherman. Again, disclosing why he was going to have his W-2s is still beyond me. It's a conversation that's not on a first date. At 5:20, Sade and Maxwell meet at the restaurant. This is 5:20 p.m. At 5:30 p.m., Sade and Maxwell leave together to head the Dukes on the Water. Remember, I said now they're going together in Sade's vehicle. At 9:06 p.m., Sade and Maxwell leave this Dukes on the Water bar. At 9:24 p.m., Sade's phone is located in the area of Anderson's home. And this is the 3100 block of South 39th Street. So now, just the assumption, outside looking in, the assumption would be that Sade is going to Maxwell's home. Still strange for a first date. We don't know how, when, if she was okay, any kind of communication. What we do know is that while she was out on the Dukes on the Water, she did happen to send a Snapchat to one of her friends. And this friend is still unknown as of this point, or hasn't been named. That she did send the snap showing the location she was at, just doing the normal thing. I Snapchat too when I'm out somewhere as well. So then we kind of go into April 2nd. Mind you, that was 9:24 p.m. when they actually see that Sade's phone is near Anderson's home. So it's kind of strange. But we'll keep going. So on April 2nd at 12:48 a.m., Sade's phone leaves Anderson's home. So now it went from being in the area to leaving Anderson's home. At 1:33 a.m., phone travels to Pleasant Valley Park. And I'll actually show the location of where that is as well. But it's oddly strange. I mean, if you're leaving the home, the next step is head home to your personal home. So why the park? We don't know. So at 2 a.m., the phone leaves the area, heads to Watermark Park by 2:45 a.m. So you're going from one park to another park. Still definitely strange. And again, from the detective's point of view, I'm sure it looks very strange to them. And this is something that the defense has to think about as well. Like, why would she go to two different parks? Why at that time of day? I mean, it's the next day. Sade has to report to work on the 2nd. She's known for always being at work. She's a very responsible young lady and someone that everyone could depend on outside of work and inside of work. So it's kind of odd. So at 2:53 a.m., the surveillance actually catches Sade's vehicle. At 3:02 a.m., the surveillance shows a figure at the beach. So it's not really too clear from what the report says say that to confirm that it is Maxwell, but it does show that it is a vehicle and a person kind of like leaving and heading to this beach. Remember, this is a beach. At 4:31 a.m., the vehicle leaves and Sade's phone dies. And we know, I think anyone in general, but specifically women, we hardly ever let our phones die. Like, if it's gonna die some serious, we need to get to the next power location. But someone like that going on a first date, I mean, the assumption would be trying to make sure to keep your phone charged. You know, you're meeting this person for the first time. The next thing is at 7:29 a.m. The surveillance shows a male walking away from the 1800 block of North 29th Street. So that's oddly strange as well. Kind of going into the notes we have here. So just remember that as well. At 7:32 a.m., Milwaukee Fire Department responds to a fire, which is a vehicle, a 2020 Honda Civic specifically, with clothes and a phone located in a truck. Still very odd. But at this time, no one knows whose vehicle that is. So the fire department is just assuming they're responding to the fire, let it out, and kind of do their own investigation at that point on how the vehicle, caught fire. Was it intentional? Was it by accident? I'm sure that's what the investigation entails of. The next thing is at 8:35 a.m., the transit system, aka the bus, shows Anderson in a gray hoodie getting off the bus near his home. So you start off on the date with your car, ride with Sade to the next location. Sade's vehicle is known as well as her phone going to your home. Then he mysteriously comes in a different location with no vehicle on a bus. That makes no sense as well. So another thing to consider as far as a defense, what was he doing at that time? So then at 5:29 p.m., someone located a human leg at Watermark Park. Now, if you remember at 2 a.m., that's where Sade's phone was actually pinging at. So that's kind of strange from 2 It's like 2:45 a.m. Her phone is like located within that area of this park. But then someone ends up finding hours later a human leg at this park. At 9 p.m., a friend of Sade's reports her missing after she fails to return to work and did not answer the calls. And if you remember me saying that, Sade was known as being very responsible and independent and dependent. So for her, she was always showing up. She was always there, whether it was for mom or her sister or work, friends, whoever, she was always dependent. Then we're going into April 4th at 1:16 p.m. Maxwell is pulled over, arrested a few blocks from his home. Same hoodie found in his car that they actually caught him on within the transit at that morning. Later, the police execute a search warrant in Maxwell's home. So by then, the report is already out for Sade missing. No one could get a hold of her. I'm sure her family is panicking. Her friends are panicking, trying to see what's going on because she's not answering her phone and she didn't show up to work. That being said, I mean, it definitely gives more of a probable cause to kind of reach out to the person that was last known with her, since she was obviously telling everybody that she was really excited to go on this first date with Anderson. So then there were additional body parts that actually populated within the area. And if you remember the time frames, and we'll go over them again, is that this is exactly the locations or near the locations that Sade's phone was actually pinging at. So we'll talk about key locations. And the key location is that at Warnermont Park on April 2nd, the leg was found. And then on 30th and Libison, if I'm not saying that correctly, hopefully I am, that also on April 2nd is when Sade's car was burning. And eventually, during the investigation, the police were able to identify that that was Miss Sade's vehicle, and that the vehicle was actually set on fire from the inside, not out. That's very suspicious in itself, and that clothes and her phone were in the trunk. Don't know why. So on 30th and West Galena on April 6th, more remains were found. So individuals that were out actually found additional remains. And I remember watching the news and just kind of stuck on, everyone going through the situation and the investigation, and the more body parts actually coming up, was people were starting to think, like, is this a serial killer out here in Milwaukee? I mean, anybody would be scared of random body parts. And again, they don't know they belong together. The assumption is that, is this more than one person? Because the investigation is still pending and Sade is still missing at this time. We haven't even had the chance to confirm that those body parts are Sade's. So on Shoreline near Marina Road on April 16, additional body parts, once more, which is a torso, was actually found, which was washed up, I believe, from the water to the beach. Her torso coming up. Again, not confirming that this was her torso until the investigation confirmed that the DNA matched Sade. So then they were actually able to confirm all body parts that were found within the area of Milwaukee were Sade's. When they had to do the search warrant inside Anderson's home, they were able to see that this house it looked like a sex dungeon in the basement. Like, very odd. I mean, some people probably have them, so I wouldn't say that's odd, but due to the circumstance and the situation, it's very odd. He was a very sketchy guy in the first place, as well as described by his friends or people that happen to know him, described him as. So as far as the notations and investigation from the police, they actually said it looked like it was more of a sex dungeon down there. It was blood everywhere, places you probably wouldn't even imagine down there anyways. So then the assumption is continued that this blood in Maxwell's home is Sade's. I mean, who else would have thought? Who else's blood could we obviously think it is? Because we only know, as of now, that Anderson has had contact with Sade, and Anderson is the last person to have contact with our beautiful Sade Robinson as we speak. So then we were able, after confirming everything as far as the blood, the body parts being Sade, they go ahead and arrest Maxwell. Again, he's already been pulled over, he's already been arrested, but they have a certain amount of time to actually hold him, build a case against him as far as evidence wise, probable cause, and it looked like they did that. Actually, as far as the court, because we're going to talk about the prosecution in the court as well, Anderson appeared in court Monday, April 22nd. He waived his preliminary hearing. So if you don't know what preliminary hearing is, it's like a mini court where they call witnesses and introduce evidence on the behalf of the prosecution towards the defense. In this case, it is Mr. Anderson. He hasn't spoken, as far as I know, hasn't commented or anything like that outside of his court appearance. Anderson actually entered a not guilty plea. And what he's being accused of and charged with is first degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, and arson. That's crazy in itself. However, as far as the first one, first degree intentional homicide, that lets you know he knew what he was doing. It was intentional. He had this plan. Maybe for someone else, but Sade was the one that was close to him at that time, and he decided to take whatever he wanted to take action-wise and do upon Miss Sade Robinson. The exact location, unfortunately, of this said murder is unknown at this time because during the investigation, remember the blood I happened to mention that was in his basement actually ended up not being Sade's. So it kind of giving me serial killer vibes. It's giving me, this is not his first time before, and we definitely need to see whose blood that is, because if it's not Sade's and she's been unfortunately cut up in pieces and dispersed within Milwaukee, who else was in there? Who else had to endure that pain of having their blood, which was a lot, in Maxwell Anderson's sex dungeon? It's just a lot to kind of grasp when you think about it. Anderson's bond is set at $5 million, and his court date has been pushed to May 16th of this year. So it's right around the corner to where we can actually see what's going on and what they're going to do and what he has to say. It kind of irks me in a little way to know that he hasn't even said anything to kind of give Sade's family, the chance to find all of Sade's remains, and so she can be able to be laid to rest peacefully. Give the family their chance to grieve and process this. Is a huge thing. And again, we're gonna say allegedly because he hasn't been charged just yet, so innocent until proven guilty. Okay. So as far as right now, we're only showing that there are individuals still out there trying to search for Sade Robinson's remains to see if they can find any additional remains out there to just bring her home. And then we're going to go ahead and continue following this case. We will follow up with Anderson's court date again, May 16th, to see if there's anything that's said, if there's any additional court dates, what they're going to go ahead and do with trial. If there's any additional witnesses, we'll go ahead and follow up with that as far as the court. And I did want to give a little bit of Anderson because my focus is mostly on Sade rather than Anderson, because our victim is Sade and she deserves the justice. and the respect to make sure that we solve her case, because again, this is not just for her, but her family as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about Anderson's background because, again, it's kind of suspect to me. And I think a lot of the people that happen to know Anderson, describing him as a weird individual, always doing weird stuff. We're just not too sure about Mr. Anderson, but we do know that his father is like $1 million like entrepreneur. He owns like an insurance company out there in Milwaukee who happens to speak his apologies to Sade Robinson's family. And I could just imagine from his point. Now, it's different if we end up finding out that he had some partake or helped or whatever. But as we know right now, they were unaware of the situation and happened to pay the respects to Miss Robinson's family. So we'll go a little bit into, once again, his background. He's a 33-year-old white male who worked at Victor's nightclub. He was a bartender, and that's off of 1230 North Van Buren Street in Milwaukee. So I'll post some pictures as I speak, just so you guys can get, once again, a glimpse of his work that he worked at and get more of a personable aspect of what was going on and who this individual truly is. His personality and his character, people who associate with him would say that he wasn't stable and also had a criminal history. Just looking at him sometimes, I know they say don't judge a book by its cover, but in this case, I very much so wanted to judge a book by its cover. So we'll start with his arrest record, his criminal record. So in 2014, he had a fight in Delafield with a family member, and he was charged with 2 misdemeanor counts of disorderly conduct and was fined $416. In 2015, a domestic abuse and egg harbor with another family member and charged with 4 misdemeanors for 3 criminal damage to property, intimidating a witness, and disorderly conduct, once again, and domestic abuse. He was actually fined $1,300. So it's saying that these 2 things that happened, we know that you did this, we're going to just charge you a fine. It's crazy. Almost the same exact thing from 2014 to 2015. So 2019, he was also charged with battery in Milwaukee, arguing with a woman on the 2300 block of West Wisconsin Avenue in Milwaukee. When a witness tried to intervene, Anderson then attacked this man, and a video showed Anderson on top of him while punching him. He was charged with 2 misdemeanors. Battery dismissed, and disorderly conduct, he got 1 year probation, guys. 1 year. Ordered to continue employment and do random urine tests, 25 hours of community service, and was fined $7,000. So it just shows repetitive behavior of him just doing what he wants and being extremely abusive and then being charged for the same exact things, or if similar, and mostly just fined, if you think about it, because 1 year probation can go by pretty quick, and it's not like he's in jail. He's at home doing whatever. So then January of 2022, a drunk driving incident in West Alley. Again, talking about Anderson. Driving 70 miles per hour in a 30, running red lights, blood alcohol content of 0.145, charged with 1 misdemeanor, 1 year probation, fine $350, and his license was suspended. License being suspended doesn't stop anybody from driving. I'm pretty sure you know as well as I know individuals driving with a suspended license. Does it stop them? No, it does not stop them. But apparently, they thought it would stop him, because in August of that same year of 2022, he was cited driving on a suspended license and tested positive for cocaine, THC, and alcohol. He ordered to remain in sobriety as a condition of his probation. Remember, that was 1 year probation from his prior charge in January. March of 2023, he was discharged from probation. So just continued again with his behavior and just seemed to get away with it. I mean, drunk driving, I'm pretty sure a lot of people watching this have either experienced an individual drunk driving, had lost family members due to a drunk driver, or a friend due to a drunk driver. That is a choice that someone has made to leave wherever they were at, whether it was a safe place or a bar, instead of calling an Uber or a Lyft or something, decided to get in their vehicle and completely intoxicated and drive and put other people's lives at danger that had no partake or decisions that you decided to make getting in that vehicle. So that is just a quick rundown of Mr. Anderson's background. And again, just kind of going through that, it just gives you that icky vibe that this man just didn't care. He doesn't care about authority, doesn't care of how much trouble he's in. So again, we're going to follow up with this case when we get another update. Any kind of information I do happen to get, I did request some additional information like a police report just to get more in detail of what's going on. And again, the court date is May 16th. My goal is to follow up with that, watch it, see if I can get any additional information that I can share with you guys. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. This is the Last Witness Podcast.